This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. A church recommend to get it on. Welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. It's Mark Garrigus over there. Where are you, Mark?
Still in New York City. Actually, with Governor Cuomo seemingly making a pivot yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, Adam. He all of a sudden, in his State of the State speech, he said that we can't just stay closed down, that we're going to have to be smart about opening up. And it appears that he's had an epiphany.
Yeah, well, you know, the math doesn't work. I mean, eventually, at some point, the governors like Newsom, like Cuomo, they have to realize that if they do not produce any, they don't make money. The citizens make money, and then they give them a portion of their money. And if the citizens aren't making money, the government's not going to be able to function, at least on the local level, and certainly on the federal level as well. So at some point, the numbers are just going to catch up to you. You have to reopen. I don't know. Our Governor Newsom doesn't seem to be doing that math. I kind of wonder, and we'll talk to Randy Economy, who's a senior advisor for the recall for Gavin Newsom, and a couple of you. I kind of wonder if you looked at it, you said L.A. or California, New York, the city in New York. These are two of the biggest and sort of most like-minded states and cities in the United States, the ones that sort of have the most in common. And they have been kind of following the policies of each other. I wonder if this news of Cuomo opening up or saying we need to reopen our businesses, I wonder if Newsom will see that and then look at it as okay for him to then for him to let us reopen. I don't know.
I think there's one fundamental difference right now, and you, as always, hit on it with your intuitively. I think that what happened is that, first of all, there's been a tipping point, as we've identified week after week, on the absolute non-data driven insanity that they have both governed under. I think that in Cuomo's case, what happened is he took a look at revenues, just like you say, at the money, and realized that there was no end game. Kind of what we have been saying. The two of us have been saying, we don't understand. There is no end game. You can't do this. This is kind of a fool's errand. And by the way, all of the techniques you tried so far have wildly failed, especially as you've seen in California and LA County. So the difference between, you can see what's happening with Newsom. There's a recall effort that has gained tremendous strength.
Yeah, Mark, your line is getting a little bit dicey. So Mark's line got a little choppy, so he's going to reboot himself over there. I think what we could hear through the broken up connection is that Cuomo kind of realized he was going to be out of money, so he needed to reopen things. I don't know what Newsom is thinking, and Newsom doesn't really tell you what he's thinking. And as far as I can tell, reporters don't ask him questions. So I don't know how we're going to figure out, for instance, when schools are going to reopen if he's not going to tell us and the reporters aren't going to ask. This is kind of part of the problem with having news outlets that are friendly to the powers that be. The Los Angeles Times is not going to press the mayor and is not going to press the governor and not going to ask the tough questions and try to get answers. That's not what they're going to do. They've decided we back these people. We like these people. They're not going to get into it with the LA Unified School District. They're not going to get into it with the teachers' unions. They're not going to ask these questions. So this is kind of the danger of having that sort of passive press, or at least the press that has sort of declared, we like this guy, so we're not going to screw with him. To me, I don't know what you're doing then. Why do you have a newspaper? Why are you the press if you're not going to press, pardon the pun, these folks for answers? But as best I can tell, living in California and living in Los Angeles, I haven't heard word one. I ask my kids twice a week, when's school going to reopen? And they go, I don't know. No one said anything. There doesn't even seem to be a plan to do it. They're open in New York as far as I can tell, so I'm not sure why they're not open here, but they're not open here. All right, Mark's trying to reboot.
He's coming back in right now. He's just unmuting himself and turning on his video camera.
All right. So, when Mark's in town, we have him in studio every time, but if he's in New York, we'll rely on technology, and sometimes the technology gets a little dicey, as we're experiencing now. Maybe I'll take this opportunity. Oh, well, there's Mark. Now I see he's popped up. Now we have to see if he's unmuted himself and can be heard.
How's this?
It seems better.
Still dicey?
Not as. All right. So anyway, continue with your dissertation.
Well, so the difference, I think, is that Cuomo is a political animal and very savvy. He sees what's happened with Newsom. Interestingly, I believe, maybe because I'm in briefing psychosis, but I think that there was a tipping point at some point with the French lobbyist, aka French Laundry incident with Newsom, that started to cut across both sides of the aisle, if you will. He's recognized that. They had two different responses. The response by Cuomo yesterday in the State of the State was to realize that he can't close down these things. He doesn't have the revenues. The response by Newsom was there was an unexpected revenue growth in California, and so his response was to dole out money. Basically, I mean, he did a budget that was off the charts, a budget proposal, and so his way out of it is basically to understand that people are very dissatisfied, and so he's going to dole out money in whichever way he can. The problem that he's got, fundamentally, Newsom, is that his plan, once again, his plans are all stopgap, and it's not going to save people. You can't just give people $1,000 or $2,000 and expect somebody who's worked for 10 or 20 years to put a business together to say, oh, thank you very much for giving me the crumbs. And his biggest problem, and we'll talk with the gentleman who's consulting on it, I think the biggest problem is that this versus your tribe, this is people who understand this is a fundamental problem with governance. Yeah.
Obviously, it's not going to work unless we can get people from his side of the aisle to also understand he's incompetent and should not be in charge of a state this size or a state any size, quite honestly. So if enough people that voted for him have turned the corner and said, you know what, I voted for the guy, I made a mistake, it's time for a change, then hopefully we can get somewhere.
Well, it's fascinating that you say that, because Trump was allowed to kind of do what he does as long as he had the firewall, whether it was the Republican Senate or those around, and mostly the Republican Senate. That was his firewall. As soon as that firewall started eroding, now you see what's happened to him. Even with 9 days left, whether or not he's going to decide he's got a threat from impeachment or not is determined by whether or not he thinks he's got a firewall in the Senate, whether or not he thinks he's going to get indicted for inciting a riot, which I think there is I'm not so sure that it's going to happen federally, meaning the normal DOJ, but I think that it's entirely possible that the District of Columbia Attorney General is looking at that and looking at Ted Cruz and looking at the others who spoke DJT. And what happens is if you start to lose, if Newsom starts to lose kind of the Democratic wave, so to speak, that California enjoys or endures right now, the same thing is going to happen that is happening with Trump. I mean, once you've got a little chink in the armor, so to speak, it's a real problem. And I think that he recognized that. And I think clearly, you can have any interpretation you want, but I think that's what's going on with Cuomo as well. I don't think that Cuomo, especially in a state like New York, which is a lot more free form in terms of flipping between Republican and Democrat than California has been since Gray Davis and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, and Schwarzenegger was kind of a rhino. I mean, he called himself a Republican, but he really didn't, I think most Republicans didn't really feel that Schwarzenegger embodied a lot of their principles, certainly not conservative at all. So what's going on with Trump? What is your head on this?
Interesting I think, and I've got a pretty good sense for a variety of reasons, that what's happening is that the White House right now is consumed by impeachment. And when I say that, that comes from inside of the White House, and that he is apparently floating back and forth between being concerned about impeachment to feigning that he still has his, what I call, the Republican Senate firewall. The problem is for him that he also, I think, seriously has to give some thought, and I've said this a million times, whether it's the Manhattan DA's office for things that he did prior to becoming president, or it's the DC location for the inciting or sedition. There is an argument that can be made that he is responsible for what happened there, and that I can see a prosecutorial theory. For those who say, oh, that's ridiculous, or have gone down the road, all you have to do is take a look at a lot of the theories of prosecution that have been used in the past, whether it's people who didn't do the actual act itself, but set it in motion. Here in California, or when you're in California, foreseeability is always a question. There's also the idea of setting something in motion, so to speak. And so I would, if advising him, I would tell him that you've got to do something, got to have an action plan if you think you're going to leave office when this drops, it'll be a matter of days. My guess is that you're going to see something happen by the time this drops coming out of the White House. I think you're going to see some kind of an action. And I think that part of the calculus as well is that it's got to be Pence. It involves the vice president, because the vice president, if you believe what's being said out there, has not spoken to him since the siege at the Capitol.
Is your theory, or you tell me what you think, are the Democrats, led by Pelosi, wanting to get him impeached as a sort of punitive kick in the ass on the way out the door? Or is there more practical reason for this, about not being able to run again in 4 years, or be able to be the potential president again in 4 years once impeached twice? It would seem to me that the Democrats probably underestimated his constituency, and they realize that 74 million people voted for him, and they also kind of realize that while he's old, he's sort of a force of nature, and that 4 years or 3 years is going to go by pretty fast. And Biden may govern in such a way that America says, I want to lower taxes. I want less regulation. I want a stiffer border. They may draw even more of those people, the Trump supporters, out of the woodwork. Do you think this is tactically based on not having him have the opportunity to run again, or is it just a FU on the way out the door?
I think, as with most things, it's nuanced in this sense. I think that there's a pent-up demand, so to speak, to stick a fork in him. And part of the way you do that, there's constitutionally, you can both impeach in the House, send it over to the Senate, but you also would need a separate vote or a bifurcated vote traditionally to prevent him from holding office again. Also, there are various code sections under the federal code that could bar him from holding office again. And I think, I will tell you, in talking with people directly who participated in the siege at the Capitol, there are true believers. And I think part of what you say is correct. There was 70 some odd million people who voted for them. There are people who consider themselves to be patriots to the point where you almost can't have a rational discussion, or at least a discussion where they will accept what, when we're talking, follow a thread, and they believe that what they were doing was what my president told me to do. So you then have this also at the same time. I think what always happens when it's a direct assault on you, which means on the Capitol, on the lawmakers who were there, that's a direct threat. So you want to strike back. There is that human nature that I'm going to hold somebody accountable. I think that's driving it. I think there's this idea that somehow, there's a compelling argument to be made that he was trying to overturn an election based on no evidence. And we talked last week about Dominion and the lawsuit they've got against Sidney Powell, and you've seen Lynn and Wood and the things he's been saying, and now they've lost the Republicans have lost the Senate. I'm sure there's a calculation involved here that politically the damage that has been done to the existing Republican Party is enormous. And this is a way or a calculation to, as is always the case, what do you describe it as? Rooting for one team or another. I always call it tribal, but this is a way to kind of exert your authority.
Let's get an update on Jussie Smollett. I've not heard his name in the news in quite a long time. I have no idea where that case is. You do, I imagine. What can you give us an update on that case?
Well, I've always had the thought that the refiling of Jussie Smollett was not because that they wanted to hold him accountable. They had already held him accountable by filing on him and indicting him the first time. I always thought that there was a more sinister motive, and the sinister motive was Cook County politics, and that the Cook County politics was you had Kim Foxx, who was an African-American progressive prosecutor and not one of the power structure or the traditional power structure there, and that appointing somebody like Dan Webb, who is a Trumpian crony, and if you believe reports, met with Bill Barr for lunch just 3 weeks ago in Chicago. It'd be interesting to see if that's where the attorney general, the erstwhile attorney general, goes to work for that law firm. And I suspect at a certain point, there aren't many trials that are criminal trials that are going on, jury trials, during the COVID era, so to speak. So I suspect at some point they're going to want to find some kind of an exit, because Kim Foxx got reelected. The apparent coup against her failed at the ballot box, for lack of a better term, and the case is sitting there at this point. Obviously, the Chicago, to my mind, has got infinitely bigger issues and problems to solve than Jussie Smollett.
When was the night of the actual incident? I can't, because of this COVID thing. If you told me it was 10 months ago, I would believe you. But if you told me it was a year and a half ago, I would believe you as well. I mean, I know it was like, I think it was more like,
I think it was more like almost 2 years ago, because I know that the case was dismissed in almost I want to say March 26th of 2019. So.
Wow.
When it was dismissed, Gary?
It was,
because I'm kind of with Adam.
The incident was January 29th of 2019.
January 2019. So 2 years. I mean, we're right at.
And
right
when
at
was
2 years.
it dismissed? Yeah.
So what do they want to charge
Isn't that
him
wild?
with? Yes.
It's been 2 years.
It's insane.
It looks like it was dismissed in March.
March. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, in March, exactly. And here we are in 2021 still dealing with it. It's one of the most frustrating things in the world when it comes to the criminal justice system, and goes back to our theory always, is if they actually had a budget that they had to deal with, it would be astonishing, because you would never be able to just kind of do these things endlessly for whatever purposes. It's shocking to me in a lot of ways.
How much of the COVID and the president and all the stuff that has transpired in the last 2 years, essentially, since that incident, how much of it works on Jussie's behalf because there's no political will anymore? I mean, I'm not asking a question. I'm kind of making a statement here, but once the news cycle turns to 1,000 different subjects and people just kind of generally lose interest, isn't it easier for the state to kind of go, no one's looking. We're not, people aren't pressuring us to indict this guy or to prosecute this guy. Like, doesn't this time sort of help, is what I'm asking?
Well, and remember, there's some other kind of factors that go into it. That police chief who went out and did a press conference that was riddled with inaccuracies is resigned or was terminated in a scandal. With one of his underlings, they've been sued on that there for that. Lori Lightfoot has had, or the mayor there has had her a series of scandals. It's interesting. One of those scandals was that has come out since then, and a cynic might say that much of this was a diversion, was that woman who was bursted in by the cops and held naked, and it was in the wrong apartment there in Chicago, and they tried to deep six that for a period of time. Rahm Emanuel, who was the then mayor, was apparently instrumental in that, along with the Laquan McDonald scandal as well. I mean, the idea that Jussie Smollett is on the top 100 things for this prosecutor, and the idea that there's a special prosecutor appointed is just almost beyond ludicrous at this point.
What is he potentially looking at? What are they wanting to charge him with?
They've got a handful of counts that they've indicted him on that are just pending right now. I think there's maybe want to say last time I looked, there was probably 4 different counts. And the definition of a double punishment would look to me. I mean, they did forfeit already the bond money the first time around. He has maintained his innocence from the get-go. And the idea that you can forfeit somebody's money in connection with dismissing the case, then when you don't like the result or the crowd votes thumbs up or thumbs down, that you're then going to re-prosecute, seems to me to be a fundamental precept of our Constitution, that you can't do that. But the trial court has ruled, and you'll have to wait later on and see if he's not acquitted, what an appellate court would do.
All right. We have our guest, who's Randy Economy, Senior Advisor, Recall Gavin Newsom. Gary will muster him and bring him in. We'll talk about the nuts and bolts of that situation. First, I'll tell you about Geico. Do you own a home? Do you rent a home? Well, you probably do, one or the other. You want to make it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance with your auto policy? Good. Go to Geico. Go to geico.com. Get a quote. See just how much you could save. It's easy when you go to geico.com and find out just how much you could be saving. All right, Randy is entering the building. Hey, Kaylin, are you going to tell him where to sit or where to go? Or did you? Okay. Give him a little guidance. He looked... How do I look? You look good, although you looked a little confused when you came in. That's why I was talking.
I only have one eye, so that's why I'm a little confused.
Oh, okay. Well, I got 3, so we're fine. Randy Economy is our guest. Website, recallgavin2020.com. He's a senior advisor to Recall Gavin Newsom. So let's see. Let's catch up here. We have over 1 million signatures, but a lot of those, maybe 25%, get disqualified. You have to get to 1.6? What do you have to get to?
1.497. And we're finding right now that our validation rate is probably about 85 to 90%.
Meaning ones that won't get dismissed.
That will not get dismissed. Right. And so the ones that we feel that we have valid right now today, sitting right here next to you, Adam, is about 1,150,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting there. We're almost there. We have 60 days to go. And we're going to make political history not only here in California, but throughout the world.
Randy?
Yeah, sure. Hi.
Mark's line is choppy.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you?
Good, buddy.
There are 2 different groups that are, that, as far as I can tell, that are leading the charge on this. Is that right?
No, there's actually only one group, and that is the group that I represent as its senior advisor. There are 4 or 5 other political action committees that are raising money to support the recall in one way or another, but there's only one recall group, and that's the one that I represent, and that group is actually led by Orrin Heatley, who is a retired sheriff up in Northern California.
What is Mark's...
and does the... have you seen...
Mark's line.
I was just going to say, have you seen a uptick in the number? It's just the worst. I can barely hear myself. I was going to just say, has there been an uptick since the French Laundry incident?
You know, the French Laundry incident will go down in the political obituary of Gavin Newsom. And I thank God for that woman who was in the French Laundry that night who took out her cell phone and said, gosh, I think that's the governor of California sitting there with 21 other people, not wearing masks, having the time of their lives. And you know what? You know, you can't deny when you get caught on camera. And the first thing Newsom tried to do was, whoa, wait a minute. You know, so we knew right then and there that his own actions were going to be his downfall. And let me tell you, Mark Garagos and Adam Carolla, that was not his first time at the rodeo. That's the first time he got caught during his pandemic that he locked down, 40 million Californians and let out every criminal he could out of the justice system.
Who would potentially take his place?
You know what? Our job at the official recall is not to pick the next governor. And we want to be very clear with that. Our job is to make sure that we do the heavy lifting. We get the signatures. We have probably 10 to 20,000 people that are actively involved every weekend, going up and down California, doing grassroots retail politics. That is remarkable. So our job is not to pick the next governor. That's going to be up to the people. And if you remember, and I think Mark can remember too, back when, and I hate to go back to when the Gray Davis recall was, because, that was a generation ago. And people like to compare this recall to the Gray Davis recall.
What year was Gray Davis?
2003.
Okay.
That was before Facebook. That was before social media. That was before any time you do anything. I think we had MySpace back then, Adam.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Not me.
Not you. Me neither. So what happened was Mark was probably on MySpace. Were you on MySpace, Mike?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, what we did was, it's not up to us. I mean, anybody who wants to run will have that ability. There could be like 500 candidates.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out the pacing. You have 2 months left.
Yeah.
You're at 1 million plus.
Yes.
You need to get to 1497 or something like that.
That's correct.
You figure about 10 or 15% are going to be disqualified.
Mm-hmm.
So the 1497 is more in the 175 or 18 range.
Our goal is to
get to.
Yeah, our goal is to get 2 million signatures.
Okay,
and I think that is a reasonable goal, and I think that is it's doable. And I think the reason is because right now what we're seeing is this petition is taking fire in the inner cities, in South Los Angeles, in Long Beach, in San Jose, in places that have been just absolutely devastated by Newsom. By his lockdown. More people are involved. We probably, I think right now, I just did our latest check a couple of hours ago. We have about 350,000 registered Democrats who have already signed this petition.
How do they arrive at the 15 number?
It's based upon, I believe, 12% of the overall people who voted for Newsom 2 years ago. And so that's the goal that we have to go ahead and reach. Again, back when Gray Davis was running, that was only 800,000 signatures that needed.
Right.
So at that, if we were at the same pace, that would have been, in 2003, we would have already reached our goal.
Newsom, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't really acknowledged this, or hasn't. I mean, maybe
is it this?
Mark's connection is horrible. There, he's got his head in his hands.
Mark, I'm praying for.
I'm calling in by phone. I have so many questions.
I've always said I don't know why we don't do it by phone, but we never want to do it by phone. All right, what do you know about what Newsom knows?
He is obsessed with our recall, and he's making up state policy as he goes along every day. We live rent-free in his head. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think that's one of the greatest accomplishments that this people-to-people movement has been able to accomplish, because now he's dictating his policies every day based upon how he can, get political points and make political hay with the masses of Californians. And, it's not by chance and it's not by mistake that every day he goes on television and, media outlets throughout California give him hours and hours of free airtime every single day, whether it be on television, on radio, doing his daily diatribe. And every day he has to throw something on the wall to see if it sticks or not. And nothing's sticking, man. And that's why I think people are just fed up with this. And that's why they're going to droves to our website and downloading the petition, signing it, and mailing it in to us.
Mark is on the line now, the phone line.
Right. I was going to ask, what are the mechanics of it? Because I have a vague memory during the 2003 of Cruz Bustamante running, the then Lieutenant Governor.
Right.
So is it
Viva Cruz
for the recall at the same time that you also vote for a new governor?
Yeah,
or is it a sequential?
Basically, what will happen, Mark, is the Secretary of State will mandate after the signatures are verified, and coincidentally, the Secretary of State is Alex Padilla, who has just been removed by Gavin Newsom, to go to the U.S. Senate and has picked a backbench member of the state legislature to take his place, which we find kind of indicative because she is now the chief election officer of California, who is ultimately one of the people who's going to help make the decision if there's enough signatures involved in his recall, along with the attorney general, who's no longer going to be here in California. So to get directly to your point here, there'll be two things on the ballot. Shall Gavin Newsom be recalled? And then the next question you will ask is, who shall replace him for the remainder of his term, which will expire in January of 2023? So that's the two questions that will be on there. Do it. Yeah, and if anybody wants to run for governor after we, do the heavy lifting and get this done, more the merrier. That's what democracy is all about, and I think it's going to be the greatest reality show ever made in television history if we can get this thing done by this ragtag group of volunteers.
I'm also very interested in another data point you just mentioned.
Sure.
You said 350,000 were Democrats that had signed on to this.
That's far, correct.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, I sense that if this, my feeling is that this guy Newsom has kind of unified people in saying now across parties, so to speak. And so you're saying that roughly more than 35% of those million are registered Democrats? What's the number of independents?
Right now, this is not a Democrat or Republican thing. Right now, we know that this is a California thing. So you take the people that have signed the petition thus far, they'll walk right up to us and say, listen, I'll sign the petition. I don't freaking care who I just want this guy out of office because I'm out of work now because of him. And I've been out of work now for 10 months. So we know that in certain areas that we are collecting signatures, which are primarily Democratic areas, the Democrats are coming up in droves. And because, again, they're the ones who are out of work. They're the ones who are suffering. Everybody is suffering. It's not a Democrat issue, a Republican issue, a decline to state issue. It's a Californian issue. And that's what's suffering. And that's why I think so many people are flocking to our website and downloading the petition. We've made it as simple as possible to get this guy recalled and thrown out of office.
To Recall Gavin 2020.com. So we go. What about teachers' unions? I got a couple of kids. They're supposed to be in school. They haven't been in school. It's been coming up on a year now. Is it true that the teachers' unions are his largest contributors in terms of supporters?
I think it's the Sacramento Swamp that has put him in power through his aunt, who was the Speaker of the House. He's beholden to them. And it's sadly, if you sit and think about it, it's the pandemic that has destroyed the teachers. And it's a pandemic that has destroyed the teachers union in many ways because they haven't been able to do what they're hired and gifted to do, and that's teach kids.
But they don't want to do it. They don't want to go back to work.
I don't know if they don't want to go back to work, but I do know that they've been sitting at home for a year and probably sit at home for another 6 or 7 months.
If the teachers,
it doesn't make any sense, Adam. Well, this whole thing is just bizarre with this guy.
If the teachers unions wanted to go back to work, don't you think they could let Newsom know that? And don't you think they would go back to work?
I think that whatever they tell Newsom is just it's just irrelevant at this point. I think he just is trying to. He's in political survival mode now.
Gary, did the LA Unified or whatever, California, do the teachers unions want to go back to work? I don't think they want to go back. I think that's the issue.
They don't. And it's a little murky when it comes to contributions during his term, but during his last election where he was running for governor, aside from small donations, they were absolutely the number one contributor to his campaign.
That's a great point. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, go ahead and use that in your talking points, which is this guy, and I don't know how many states have their schools shut down, but California is amongst, if it's not the only one, there's only a handful of others. The kids are suffering. It's insane. And the teachers do not want to go back to work because they've made it clear that they do not want to reenter the classroom, and they have a champion for that cause in Gavin Newsom.
Well, there's also one thing. There's a lot of teachers who are backing our recall movement who are not part of the union structure of the teacher world, which is completely bizarre to me that a union would completely dictate to, tens of thousands of teachers every single day in California their livelihoods. So they're stuck in a box. They're stuck in a sand trap, and they can't get out. But what they can do is they can sign the petition. They can get their fellow teachers to sign the petition, and that's the magic of this. We're making this so simple for people to do. It's wonderful.
So I'm curious about the chart. You have 2 months left.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day.
You're at a little past the halfway point, in your opinion, but technically you don't need to get to 2 million. You just want to get to 2 million.
That's correct.
Are you charting your sort of daily progress? Obviously, 60 days left. If you signed up 10,000 people a day or 50,000 people a day, are you able to sort of chart it, look at it, and then prognosticate?
Yes, we do. And as a matter of fact, right now, Orrin Heatley, who is the chairman of our campaign, is driving literally hundreds of miles up and down California with other coordinators who are doing the heavy lifting to be able to collect petitions. And so we can track down to the signature how many we know that are valid, how many that are not valid, before we even send them to the county registrar of voters offices in 58 different counties. The registrar, the California Secretary.
And is my memory correct that you had to go to a judge to give you more time because of these lockdowns in the first place?
That's correct, and we did, and the judge was very, very favorable to us. And there's a possibility, since Newsom continues to put us down in lockdown, that we could go back to that same judge and say, "Hey, give us another 30 extra days, man." And but that's
so ironic. That's so ironic, don't you think? That his lockdowns gave you more time to recall him.
Well, as one of the America's top prosecutors, America's top attorneys, and Mark, and I have so much freaking love for you. You have no idea how much respect I have for you. That you get it. You totally get the legalese that is going on behind the scenes. But in the meantime, give me a microphone with 50,000 watts coming out of it, and I'm going to go ahead and tell the story of these thousands of people that are so dedicated every single day to making this happen. And that's a political miracle that every governor in America should be put on notice.
Well,
I will tell you my personal experiences. I've seen so many, because we get inundated at the office with people whose businesses have been shut down, gym owners, restaurant owners, things like that. I've never seen the political, all of a sudden, activism of people who normally have not done a thing, but have understood intuitively and financially just how crazy this whole thing is. I always repeat the one I was telling somebody yesterday. One of my favorite tweets of Adam's is, "We're going to lock down so hard in California until we get to the numbers of those places that didn't lock down." And people get it. They understand it intuitively.
Yeah.
And he's created a whole kind of a political action movement of people with small businesses who are just trying to survive.
We have so many amazing business owners and bartenders and people in the service industry that are decimated. They're in food lines now. They're picking up boxes of groceries and toilet paper so they can survive. And the only one to blame is Gavin Newsom. It's nobody else. He is the chief executive officer of the fifth largest economy in the world. And for him to shut this down for the last 10 months is absolutely the most bizarre, crazy thing. And he should be, if the guy doesn't resign, we're going to kick his ass out.
From your mouth to God's ears, we'll cut the show a little bit shorter than usual just because of some scheduling today. But I'll give your website a plug, recallgavin2020.com. You can download and print the petition yourself, or you can find signing locations, which will be listed across the state, I'm assuming, on the website.
Yes, sir.
Randy Economy, thank you so much, and Godspeed is what I would say to you. Mark, sorry about the Zoom connection today, but we'll make it up in the next show. But thanks for calling in, buddy.
Thank you. Bye, Adam. Bye, Randy.
Bye, Mark.
And until next time, it's Adam Carolla for Mark Garagos and Randy Economy saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.